Can I just thank Cure and Res Publica for hosting this tonight, because I think this meeting is coming at a moment, and the moment is just prior to the white paper, and I think it's great that Nick and Philip and Philip are here, because it's a contribution, I hope, to the development of ideas in front of the white paper. I don't want to talk about structural reform tonight, because I think the opportunity is much wider for this particular meeting to discuss about where the teaching profession is at, which is what Philip has just been talking about. I was very taken by Michael Gove's comment in his interview in The Guardian, where he says, "I want as much as possible to end the idea that there are two types of people in education, lecturers and academics at university who are thoughtful and intellectual, and teachers who do not live the life of the mind. It's part of a new approach that recognises you cannot improve education unless you enhance the prestige and esteem of the profession." Now, I mean, that hooks in with, I think, what Nick was saying, which is the McKinsey quote about no education system can be better than the quality of its teachers. And I think that's both are very interesting points indeed. I mean, having joined academia and moving from a practical sort of policy stroke teaching environment, it's very interesting to me to see that kind of discourse and that critique. Now, Gerard mentioned the book that John Macbeth and Maurice Golden and I have just written and had published, Reinventing Schools. And what is crystal clear from that book is that no government, up until now, has had a comprehensive strategy for the teaching profession. Gillian Shepherd actually introduced the literacy and numeracy strategies in '96, not the Labour government. In fact, the 13 authorities that contributed to that strategy, to Stannard and Anita Straker, those authorities had an equal relationship with those who were putting together the best of good practice in terms of literacy and numeracy. And it was only when it was turned into a rollout strategy by Labour that suddenly it felt like an imposition to teachers. And I think there's a lot of interrogation and analysis that needs to be done if you're constructing a proactive teaching profession, a proactive strategy for the teaching profession, which actually buys in the ownership of teachers. A few other things that have come in on the way. I think performance-related pay has by and large failed. As far as I'm concerned, bearing in mind the research that's come out, aspects of the school workforce agreement are decidedly iffy, and we need to have a look at that. And we did have a professional development strategy for teachers between 2001 and 2003, but that actually expired at the first whiff of a minor funding crisis, which pale into insignificance compared with the kind of economic problems of today. But it really did achieve buy-in from teachers during those 2 years. I just want to say something about government actions on pupil behaviour. I think that's very welcome. I think a lot of the proposals made subsequent to the last act that came in on teacher behaviour, the 2006 Act, have been sensible. And the idea that you can distinguish, if you're searching a child, between whether or not they got something that's illegal or legal is something that I think has been sensibly addressed. And I also welcome the international perspective of this government as well, because I do think that now it's impossible for any country to actually descend into a bunker and not actually take any notice of what's going in any other country. There's a very, very important part in the Teaching and Learning International Study, which is OECD's examination of what teachers think about their professionalism and their learning. What TALIS concentrates on is teacher self-efficacy. Now, I don't know of a study in this country that concentrates on teacher self-efficacy, and I do welcome the fact that this government is looking favourably on the second round of TALIS. And let's have a look at the definition of self-efficacy. The shorter Oxford English Dictionary says, self-efficacy is where you are certain that you can produce the intended effect, confident and proud of being effective. And that's exactly, it seems to me, where the teaching profession ought to be at. So we need a strategy which raises not only the prestige and esteem, but self-efficacy, and above all builds good teachers into the decision-making of government. And I think this moment represents a big opportunity. First of all, I'm going to finish up with some hard and very brief policy proposals. I think Pauline Perry and Stephen Dorrell's submission to the Shadow Cabinet in 2007 on the future of public services was an interesting submission, and they proposed a Chief Education Officer from the teaching profession at the heart of government. I do hope that's included in the White Paper. I think we should establish a material funded entitlement for all teachers to professional development. And we should establish a minimum length for teacher training, and it should be a minimum of 2 years. Now, I think Teach First, and I'm on the National Council for Teach First, is a good programme, but it is not of itself a strategy for the teaching profession. What we need to do is to establish, it seems to me, how we look at teacher training and how to actually, in a sense Philip was talking about this, integrate the knowledge and experience and deep theory of universities into practical training in classrooms. And I'm very attracted to the Finnish model, where you have schools which are staffed by university teacher trainers. So they teach, and they teach student teachers. So I think university teacher training schools is something that this government could be looking at. I think we've got to drop the current performance-related pay system, and I think we need to look favourably on the idea of a chartered teacher status for all teachers. And it shouldn't mean that you've got to jump through hoops to achieve it. You've got to demonstrate your learning, in a sense. It's exactly what happens in Scotland. The chartered teacher status is there in Scotland and well embedded. And that learning should not only depend on masters and doctorates, important as they are, it should actually focus on other aspects of learning as well. I think teachers should be entitled to a sabbatical once every 7 years. That came out of the James Report of 71, believe it or not, had some effect. But I think every experienced teacher should be entitled to a sabbatical to investigate good practice in the classroom and research what works. I think a bank of best practice should be set up on the best forms of teaching, a pedagogic bank, and should be owned and run by teachers. And teachers should be asked whether they want a professional council, and if so, what do they want it to be. And I think we also, as I say, need to have a look at the school workforce agreement and see what works and what doesn't. Now, I'm going to finish by a very interesting piece of work by Timperley and Lee. A little quote from that, which is a research review on the power and impact of professional development. They say professional development has the highest impact of all policy levers in education. It has potentially transformational effects. And all I can say is I agree. So to paraphrase Bill Clinton, when he talked about it's the economy stupid, as far as I'm concerned, it's the teachers stupid.